price you pay to pursue your dreams. Grinding every day to get that dream. Ain't no holding back until you get your shot. One day you're gonna open your eyes and be on top. That's the price you pay to pursue your dreams. Grinding every day to get that dream. Ain't no holding back until you get your shot. One day you're gonna open your eyes and be on top. Been playing this game since I was 10 years of age. I wanted to make my mark ever since my Pop Warner days. When I strapped that helmet, I'm knocking dudes into a blaze. A lockdown corner going all the way through 7th and 8th grade. Entering high school, I'm ready to write another page. Busting my ass and lifting weights. It's a much higher level, but I'm still making plays. No time to party or bask in my glory days. It's college preparatory classes every single day. Living my life with that singular goal. It's the fire inside that makes me whole. Looking in the mirror, my muscles swole. I'm on a mission, and I'm never gonna stop. When the ball's in the air like Sherman, I'm a hawk. And I promise I'll overcome whatever life throws at me. All right, good evening everyone, and welcome to the Ageless Movement Podcast. I'm your co-host Scott Lohman.
And Zane Poinak.
Okay, a couple topics we're going to talk about here today. Number one, what do you do if you get COVID and you start experiencing symptoms? And the number two thing we're going to talk about today?
Prediabetes.
Prediabetes, something that people just sleep on, don't they?
Yes.
Quite often. Okay, let's get right to it, everyone. I hope you're having a great weekend. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. All right, so what happens if you do get COVID? And you're going to want to know these things because, so if you do get COVID, you're going to want to know this because, as you know, all the ICUs are full, completely out to the hallways everywhere. There was one area, Marin now is getting a little bit of breathing in their ICUs. I think they've got 5 or 6% left till they reach full capacity. Okay, why am I talking about this today? Okay, so let's say, for instance, you get COVID. The way they are now, they pretty much want you staying home, even with symptoms, unless your symptoms become pretty serious, okay? Because they have all they can handle right now. Okay, so what if you are in that situation and you're starting to experience symptoms? Okay, number one thing you should do is get a pulse oximeter. And I know I don't have one right now.
I do somewhere.
Yeah, it's somewhere. But we also have one at work on our blood pressure, our blood pressure monitor. And
well, basically, it's the thing that goes on your finger.
Correct.
Where they measure.
Yeah, it goes on your finger and it measures the amount of oxygen saturation in your blood. Now, why is that important? Well, so you want to be above 90. You want to make sure that you're in that range. And most people that are healthy are between 94 and 100, somewhere in that ballpark. And it'll average out a lot because maybe your nose is stuffed up or you're just a little congested or something like that. That can have an effect on your lung ventilation, which has an effect on your O2 saturation. But the point is, you don't want to be below 90%. Like, something's not right with you if you're below that, okay? All right, now, when you do get into a situation where you are experiencing drops below that 90% oxygen saturation, and just for the record, so you know, it's quite simple. You put it on your finger. It takes about 5 seconds usually to start to get a good reading. And then it just tells you a number, and you want it above 90. It doesn't take an expert, a medical expert, to use it, and everyone should have one of those right now. Readily accessible. Okay, now what I want to get to is, what if it does start to drop? Okay, obviously, if it starts getting well below 90, and you're getting in the 80s, the lower 80s, you do need to get to a hospital. You do need oxygen. Now, this is where your knowledge comes in here. I don't know if you remember when President Trump got COVID, he became very symptomatic and had difficulty breathing. Now, I know he likes to downplay it, but he was on the edge of a knife. And what I mean by that is when you get to that point where your O2 sats are below 80 and you're having trouble breathing, because that's usually where it is, you're not long for this world. So what they did was they gave him a drug called Regeneron. Basically, these drugs here are a group called monoclonal antibodies. I'll say that again, monoclonal antibodies. And the one they gave President Trump was Regeneron. And for some reason, this is basically like the human antigen cocktail. And what it does is it really helps reverse, the deadly effects of COVID once you're at that point. And there's a bunch of other drugs. Eli Lilly makes one. It's called
Bamlanivimab.
Oh, Bamlanivimab. Okay. If they hear you in the hospital go Bamlanivimab, they'll know what you're talking about. Bamlanivimab. I'm not even going to try to pronunciate this other one here. Just remember, Regeneron. Regeneron and Eli Lilly, those are two different drugs.
Eli Lilly is the maker.
Yeah, Eli Lilly's the maker. Bamlanivimab. All right, let's move on because that's really, if I was president, I would sign an executive order stating that they have to come up with easier names for these drugs. Okay, next one. Let me go find it here. Oh, yes, there it goes. All right, who is high risk for eligible? Who's eligible for COVID? Yeah, who's high risk for it? Okay. People with one of the following here. If you have a BMI, that's your body mass index. If it's over 35, that's a risk. Just a way of saying if you're overweight, you're at risk. I mean, unfortunately, fat cells or adipose, which is fat cells, is a good conduit for virus like SARS-CoV-2. Kidney disease. All of us have probably known somebody with kidney disease. Diabetes, which relates to what we're going to be talking to in a little bit. People that are on immunosuppressive, have immunosuppressive disease or on immunosuppressive drugs, currently receiving immunosuppressive treatment. If you're over 65, that is a factor, but not really a big factor. And then patients over 55 with cardiovascular disease. We're going to move to the next one. Okay, and for people that are under 65 years old, if you have one of the following here, cardiovascular disease, which a lot of people do, hypertension, high blood pressure, COPD. Now, I can't stress to you enough how important it is to make sure you keep your blood pressure under control. Now, a lot of people are on blood pressure medications. Sadly, it's avoidable. Like, a lot of people don't have to be on this. If you just increase your fitness level by not even a wide margin, you can make sure you're not on blood pressure medication. Aerobic or cardiovascular training 3 to 4 days a week is good. But if you combine that with strength training or some type of circuit training, I guarantee you're going to be able to drop your blood pressure lower than just taking blood pressure meds. And that's the whole point of this. Your blood pressure starts going up because your heart has to work so much harder to pump blood to all your organs and tissues. Okay? So that's something every one of us need to control. All right, also, if you're younger, you're 12 to 17 years old, and you're above the 85th percentile, you notice how body fat is a constant factor in all of this. So once again, another reason to get leaner. Sickle cell anemia, any congenital or acquired heart disease, neurodevelopmental disorders such as cerebral palsy, you're going to be high risk. Also, people that are medically related technological dependence. So meaning people that have had a tracheotomy, anyway. Yes, that. Colostomy bag, things like that. And also positive pressure ventilation. Okay, so some simple tips and quick review. What you want to do is make sure that you do have a pulse oximeter if you do come down with COVID, and keep a close watch on that, okay? Because it can start dropping and you may not even realize it's getting below 90, but you will once it does. Yes, blue lips. If you get to the blue lips part, you're definitely probably in the 70s. So just to keep in mind, pulse oximeter, make sure that if you do get into ICU and you do have symptoms, try to request for monoclonal antibodies, okay? Especially Regeneron. We know it worked. All right, Sam, we're on to the next topic. I'll let you take control. Should we get this out of the way here? And all right. Okay.
Okay, so our next topic is basically follows this book, which was a recommendation, I think, by Tufts University on healthy habits for managing and reversing prediabetes. And it's written by Marie Feldman, who is a registered dietitian. And oddly enough, it was written not that long ago.
Yeah.
It was published in 2019. Which is a little interesting reading it now because I would have had a totally different take on this if I knew a pandemic was going to happen.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So that was a little bit interesting reading this book based on just kind of what she recommended.
And what is it called again? Healthy Habits, Managing and Reversing Prediabetes. And the author's name is Marie Feldman, MD.
RD, registered dietitian.
Registered dietitian, gotcha.
So basically the way it's broken out, like the first chapter is basically what is prediabetes and how to treat it. The reason why earlier Scott mentioned like we shouldn't ignore it is because your likelihood of stroke and a heart disease increases by like 50%. So yeah, which is why I always say like it's better to have an idea or know rather than just live in the dark. I think I've mentioned that in previous podcasts. It's good to know what you're up against and how to deal with things rather than just ignoring it, not going to the doctor. And I understand we're in a pandemic, but I know far too many people who are refusing to go to the doctor now, and they wait for signs, and the signs are now here. So you still got to go to the doctor because now you have signs.
And then I've run across students of mine, even clients of mine. I'm looking at their ankles or their feet sometimes. If it's summertime and you're training them, they're not wearing shoes. Mm-hmm. You can see what it looks like when people either are on that fringe of having diabetes or are just pre-diabetic. Mm-hmm. The circulation doesn't look the same. The coloring is kind of interesting. Anytime I see stuff like that, I tell my clients, you need to see your doctor.
Yeah. And I have a client who is overweight. I mean, basically, I would probably say in this point, obese. And where things get interesting is like, everything's kind of accumulating down in the ankles, and I'm always having to deal with that because that affects his movement. Yeah. Because of all the swelling. So, I mean, there have been times where the workout is solely focused on pumping all of that, everything that's just puddled in his ankles before we can even start, which is a good half hour of our hour workout. Mm-hmm. Is just doing prep work like that. So, so much easier if you already have like healthy habits where you're walking regularly, you're not sitting most of the day, because I think that's what it comes from, because I know he walks in the morning mm-hmm. every day, but then goes and sits at his desk job. So everything accumulates, and then we have an evening workout, and by that point it's like, okay, well, we got to pump all this out and make it move. And that actually goes back to foot function too, which we did mm-hmm. a podcast before the holidays on, and why I think a lot of people don't really pay attention to their feet, but it's really important because that's where, I mean, it's the bottom of, it's where you hit the ground. It's your contact with the ground, and most of us have no idea what's going on. We don't know how to walk properly, so the muscles aren't working properly in the chain that it should work, so that these things happen naturally. Yes, they should happen naturally, but we've already kind of changed the whole system that it no longer does it that way anymore. So now we're up against a lot of these types of diseases increasing. But even on top of that, like I think 12% of Americans are even considered metabolically healthy, that they don't have insulin resistance, which I think most people do have because they have the high levels of sugar. The other thing that it's defined under is like you'll end up having high triglycerides, high LDL, and then your blood pressure is also potentially high in that whole list. I mean, they're all tied together.
So don't you find that interesting? They are all related. If you do have hypertension, it's going to spill over into other areas. You just get that blood pressure under control, you'll find all those other areas get under control as well. Mm-hmm. Everything's related to everything else. Try not to think of these things as separate entities.
Yeah, there's actually even a study right now, or it's already completed, where they talk about the metabolic syndrome is considered a pre-indicator of COVID-19 and the lethal outcomes. And it basically determines your odds of mortality depending on your combination and how high of a risk you are. So that's why all of this,
mm-hmm.
we always try to work on it.
Yeah, it's really important. And so many people they don't keep their blood pressure under control. And really the one is the glucose level. My own brother-in-law, who's a home builder and a fantastic home builder at that, he's a classic guy that for a lot of years didn't pay attention to it because it was under 100. It was 85. And then 5 years later, it's 90. Then another 3 years later, it's 95. And then, long story short, eventually it gets over 100. And that's when my sister just laid the smackdown with him. Is like, look, you might lose a leg, you might die of heart disease. You got to start taking this seriously. And fortunately, he did. And for him, it was quite simple. He just changed his diet slightly. He didn't go to Taco Bell anymore, or at least not every day for lunch. And, he lost about 15 pounds, which isn't a lot for him because he's quite tall. He's about 6'3" or 6'4". So, he got it down. It's under 100. And sometimes it starts creeping up again, and he realizes he's got to work on his diet a little more. He doesn't really exercise, but he's a home builder. Even though he's retired, he's like always building churches and things. So at least he's very physical. And although it's not as targeted and doesn't cover all the areas that he needs to work on in terms of fitness, he is lifting things up and climbing things and working. So that helps.
Yeah.
But, my sister got him to go to the gym with him before, COVID shut the gyms down. But she says the gyms are open again.
Oh, good.
In Oregon. They live in Grants Pass, Oregon.
Yeah. So
if you're here in the Bay Area, especially if you're in Santa Clara County, you can't even do finger extensions with that in public. You'll get in trouble for that.
So the other thing about this book, I like number one, it's simple. As you can see, it's not that big.
Yeah.
I think it's two.
It's an easy read too. Yeah,
and it was super easy to read. Yeah. Because literally, it's like it just gives you a number. Oh, here we go. Number 27. Don't just sit there. And it kind of gives you these little tips on how to avoid just sitting there. So, here it says 30 to 60 minutes, stand up, take a bathroom break, go get water, take a short walk. But that's what all of this is that she gives you a tip along with other, a list of things that can be done to make it become a habit. So there is it's not a lot. It's like 5 to 10 pages on building habits. So it's, I think, really easy. But one thing where it starts off is kind of setting goals. And she uses what I think a lot of people use. I used to use the same technique in business, was making SMART goals. So you basically make a specific goal, a very specific goal, make sure that it's measurable and not just, I want to feel better. That's very vague. And then that it's action oriented. So you can actually get
Yes.
get there.
Yeah. You have to set goals for yourself, short-term goals and long-term goals. And well, no long-term goal was ever achieved without weekly, daily goals.
Yeah. Also making them realistic, and then lastly, timely.
Yeah.
So setting a time frame for all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, it goes into eating for life, which is kind of interesting because this week I took a test on. I was drawing blood, and they were asking me about my eating habits. And one of the questions was, do you eat to live and not live to eat? And I had to read that a couple times just to make sure I understood.
And you're like, I eat to live.
Right.
I live to eat.
Because there is a difference. And I mean, I even said it to my client, I think earlier this week, I kind of said eating was becoming cumbersome, like it's just a task. And he clearly did not agree with me.
That's funny.
So, it is what it is. But
it is a lot of work if you are taking your diet seriously and trying to eat healthier foods. You want to make sure you're eating all your meals, and you have to prepare your food because you can't go out to eat for every meal and expect it to be, healthy meals. Or
you'd be surprised, like you go to get a meal, what's in it, and like you go home and try to make the exact same meal. Because so one of the suggestions in here, I don't even remember what number it was that you shouldn't weigh yourself often, but
I always tell her that because she literally weighs herself every day, and your weight fluctuates with water weight and all kinds of things.
This is where we disagree.
Oh, you and I?
Oh yeah,
we never disagree on anything.
Right. So what Scott's telling you, I think most people would tell you, and not that I don't think it doesn't make sense, but I'm data driven. So I do measure it every day just to see what effect my food has on my weight.
But what I always try to stress to her is the decisions you make today for your diet, you won't see necessarily tomorrow.
Yep.
It may be 2 days to 3 days to a week later. And that's how you got to look at it. You can't just, I'm going to eat healthy tonight and then wake up tomorrow, I didn't lose any weight, and freak out. That's just not the way to be. That's what leads to eating disorders. Not that you have one, but you know.
No, but I have a really good idea what happens if I go get sushi, which is pretty much every Friday night.
Yeah.
I pretty much know that the weight's going to go up.
Why does sushi make your weight go up?
Because of the white rice.
Okay.
Which, I've already cut white rice pretty much from my diet except for when I get sushi, because not every place has brown rice or quinoa, for their sushi rolls.
Yeah.
So that is the choice that I make. But I only do that every 1 to 2 weeks.
It's funny, white rice, I know it's the worst thing in terms of the glycemic index. I always choose brown rice. I like the taste of it better too. But when you go to a Japanese restaurant, I get chicken teriyaki. Sometimes they'll have brown rice, but they usually don't. I don't find that it makes me gain weight per se. But then again, I don't eat that much of it. Like, they don't give you a big old pot of it. They just give you a little thing of it.
That little bit is enough for my scale to go up.
For me, that's not really going to do much.
Which is how I know, like, if I decide to go order sushi, I'm making the decision that, okay, today I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
So.
True. Okay, so one thing I'd like to add to it.
Yeah.
I have a real simplistic approach with nutrition in terms of keeping your glucose levels under control. When you sit down to eat, you got to make sure that most of your diet, that the proportion and symmetry of your diet, of your meal, I should say, is correct. So if I sit down and I have a lean steak, and I have, say, vegetables and some sweet potato mash or something, that's a really good balance of protein, vegetables, to carbohydrates. Now, if you sit down to eat and, unfortunately, like we do when we go to Texas, and we got barbecue, but then we got potato salad, we got cornbread, what else do we got? Beans, not that beans are bad, but my point
I
is,
think there they only have
well, I'm trying to come up with
potato,
when we were
cream corn.
okay, cream corn, but when we were in Austin, they gave us,
Oh yeah, maybe.
and you got cornbread. Suddenly now your carbohydrate intake is outweighing the proportion of your protein and your fat. And that's where you'll want to watch out. You want to have more protein and fat than carbohydrates. And you want to make sure that you're eating enough vegetables and things that grow from the ground. You just want to keep that symmetry with every meal. And I know sometimes it's going to get skewed, but you just want to limit that skewing to maybe once or twice a week.
Yep.
You know, skewing in the wrong direction. Right direction, you want 5 days a week.
Yeah, no surprise that chapter 4 is about how to eat for your life.
Yeah.
Here. She does do a breakdown of carbohydrates and stuff, which I think is often, that's the first thing everybody cuts, but at the same time, they don't know how to manage their energy.
Well, I was just going to say, and that's the tricky thing. So, you know, and a lot of this, everyone, you got to understand, it really hinges on how much activity level you have. You got to kind of think of it like how a diabetic has to choose the amount of insulin based on the amount of exercise and activity they have in a day. You have to use a similar formula for how many carbs you need in each meal. And obviously, if you're going to go for a long hike, say the Big Basin Trail, and you're going to come out on the other side, on the coast side, you should probably eat more carbs that day. You're going to need it. But if all you're going to do that day is stretch or do yoga or just do some strength training and not much more, then just load up a little more on the protein and just ease up a little bit on the carbs. Now, I had said this before in previous podcasts, one that had very high viewage. I am not a big believer of extreme dieting. So what do I mean by extreme dieting? Where you say, no more carbs. Well, you know, the body reacts to this sort of thing, and oftentimes it does negatively, even though when you cut your carbs, you get leaner. There's no question about it. And you might be able to make that shift where you can function in your daily life like that. But here's the problem. When you do start eating a somewhat normal amount of carbohydrate intake, your body's going to want to store it.
And then the more you keep cycling through those.
Yes, the more you dull everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to kind of cycle it to the point where the body's used to like what you're doing. Mm-hmm. But when you have like these huge like peaks and valleys, now your metabolism's like not really sure and it doesn't trust what you're going to do. So it's like, let me just hold on to everything.
Yeah, peaks and valleys aren't good for human beings. We're better with consistency.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, if you are going to go that route, like it should feel like a nice taper up and down and not like huge spikes and huge decreases.
Yeah, and that's what we're talking about. And you really have to sort of plan your life out if you're going to eat healthy and know, okay, I'm going to be extra physical today. I'm going to lift weights in the gym. I'm going to take a yoga class. I'm going to go for a hike, or I'm going to go for a run, or I'm going to swim after. If you have one of those days, or even a weekend where you know you're going to be hiking, or you're going to be rock climbing or something like that, yeah, you'll want to dial up your carbohydrates more on those days. So it makes sense. You know, you can kind of reward yourself a little bit depending on what your activity level is. And when you know you're going to be at jury duty or something where you're going to be sitting on your butt all day long, that's when you want to cut back the carbs a bit and definitely, you know, adjust your diet accordingly.
Yeah, and one of the tips for that is, and I run into this all the time, is when I travel, it's probably best to bring your own snacks.
True-ish, yeah.
Because when you get to the airport, there's really nothing good at the airport, no matter where you go.
It's so true. Airports are bad in a lot of ways.
So chapter 5 in this book, no surprise, it's about exercise.
No kidding, you have to exercise to get your glucose under control?
Yeah, and actually she does a really good job talking about it. You cannot manage diabetes with just changing your diet. You have to have exercise with it.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. And that's the other thing you all have to understand. If you're just sitting around, whatever sugar you eat, it's not going to be utilized properly. You're going to get insulin resistance. And all the excess glucose, it gets stored as fat, and it starts creating problems for your health. Now, if you do, and this is the beauty of exercise, it does give you a buffer. And what I mean by that is, if I have, I don't know, a weekend where I eat 2 its or something, right?
Oh, you already got halfway on that.
Yeah, you just like gotta throw my laundry out there. Just throw it out there.
Well, we always try to do just one day of ice cream.
Yeah, well, anyway, yes, we do.
One night,
And
it's small.
But the point is, like, oftentimes we do this on a Friday night, and what did I do? What did we do a few hours before?
We worked out.
We worked
it's
out.
Our favorite day to work out.
Correct.
Because we know it's going to happen.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, it's not like just going for a walk where you primarily burn fat because you're breathing plenty of oxygen. But for the type of training Sang and I do, we really burn a lot of blood-borne glucose, and it basically gets converted to glycogen in your muscles, and creatine, that's another thing that your muscles need to replenish for power, for strength. So there's a real taxing of your body and a need for glucose uptake in the muscles. So here's the thing, at the end of a workout, when you've completely depleted glycogen from your body, not completely, but you've severely depleted glycogen from exercise, you eat a little bit of sugar along with a healthy meal, and that sugar goes right to your muscles to replenish. So that's the best time to treat yourself to something like that. Of course, you don't want to do it all the time, but the point is, that's the advantage that exercise gives you. It gives the sugar that you eat a need to burn it, either in your muscles, or even, oxidative training when you're doing some type of long endurance training. You'll utilize the sugar, especially if you're lifting, because it'll absorb in your muscles. And that's the advantage. You oftentimes see people with really serious diabetes, or I'd say serious situations where there's a steep climb from a controllable blood glucose level to where it becomes diabetes. And you don't see the working out, you don't see the exercise, and then what do you see in addition to maybe not the best diet? You see somebody that drinks their sugar all day long, soda, Coca-Cola, Pepsi,
Yeah,
alcohol.
Especially in this day of Starbucks.
Right?
That's been a
Starbucks, gotta have my coffee in the morning, yeah.
Well, for me, like I always found it interesting when children would come in and they'd order frappuccinos that were bigger than their torso. And that's pretty scary.
Yeah, what is it doing to them as far as their insulin resistance? And they're going through these really important developmental periods where they're taking in excess levels of sugar. And are they offsetting that with the right amount of activity? I mean, some kids do, the other kids, I wouldn't say. If they're sitting there playing video games,
Right.
you're not burning enough for a tall glass of a latte or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so those are all things you need to factor in, and just understand exercise really helps your body deal with the excesses of your diet. And when you have the excesses of your diet and you don't have the exercise, then you're in a bad situation.
Yeah.
Because your muscles, I'm telling you, they crave glycogen. If you work them, the harder you work them, the more it's going to crave.
So in the chapter of exercise, I think I found 4 tips that I really liked. But
Yeah, what's that?
Oh, you really want to know?
Well,
So one of them was to schedule the workout into your calendar, and I actually do this. I know you don't do it. You just go.
It's in my
6
calendar.
o'clock. Whereas I'm like, I put it on the calendar and I move it as I need to throughout the day. Especially now, I'm finding it, and I think you now, ever since your surgery, have done this too.
What?
Is you break up your workout. So
Yes, yeah, because I'm quite a bit different now. I have to do a lot of corrective exercise to make sure I function properly. But I'm telling you right now, you have to understand, sometimes you have to do corrective exercise to make you function better, but it's not necessarily going to give you the overall strength you want, or the conditioning, or even the shaping of your body, so to speak, your body composition. That's going to come from harder training. But they all kind of go together, and you're right saying, I've had to do a lot more corrective exercise since my knee injury, not just for the knee, but for other things. And you're right, I have to kind of do these multiple things throughout the day before I get to my real workout.
And Scott's, I think, a little bit different than most people. It is a very distinct section of his workout. Like for me, with my clients, I just program it into various. It's basically kind of like their break.
Yeah.
Is there corrective exercise in between? Because I do look for kind of the elevated heart rate. Once I get to that point, then we work on correctives. But if they can't focus, then I have to do what Scott does is I put it in the beginning. So yeah, correctives, or you put it on your days off too is the other option.
Yeah.
Because at least you're still moving,
Mm-hmm.
but you're still working on the things that need to be.
And that's how I am. If I have time, like usually on a Wednesday, it's definitely a day off for me from lifting. I try to work in cardiovascular training, and at the very least, I try to do my corrective exercise, my anatomy and motion exercises for the knee. I definitely do all my stretching no matter what, anytime, Monday through Sunday, beginning and end, whatever it is, I fit it in, my Eldoa, all that stuff's going to get done in some capacity.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the other thing she talks about is take advantage of technology. I had a different take on it. She talks more about like using apps on your phone. To me, I mean, especially after, going through this pandemic, you see how science is amazing and can come up with a lot of things and a lot of tools and they can come out really quickly. And what was interesting for this book being written in 2019, it didn't really have as much technology in it other than using apps on your phone. So for me, when it comes to using technology, I use everything from an HRV monitor to kind of see like how my heart responds when I wake up in the morning. I use a pulse, a strap to measure my heart rate during my workouts. I use my watch to do the same thing, to track my workouts. But even beyond all of that, we're already 2021, and nowadays you can pretty much buy your tests online. You don't even need to go see a doctor or schedule a doctor.
I use my water bottle.
That's your technique.
I have my health app on my iPhone, and I tap on it. It tells me how many steps I'm doing.
Yeah, that one's a good one too, because actually there is a study that now actually older adults are no longer able to make their step count.
Yeah.
And they're like down in 2000 levels.
Yeah, see, that's not good. And that's the thing. We are in a pandemic, but you know what?
You should be able to get more of it in.
You should put your N92 mask on if you're older, or excuse me, N95, and go for a walk. Just avoid people. It's not that hard. Well, I guess it depends on where you live. If you're in a really crowded place, I guess that is difficult. But in the Bay Area, it's nice, in California. You usually find a place where there isn't people. Yeah, just put the mask on, walk around your neighborhood, and just avoid people. If you want to talk to somebody, make sure you stand 10 feet. And that's the thing. Some people tell me, I hate wearing my mask when I exercise. Okay, don't wear it, but here's the thing. If you're going to be around any people, put it on. You can leave it on something like on a lanyard around your neck. Sang does that all the time. Or put it in your pocket. And when you see somebody that you want to talk to, or you're going to be around people, put it on. Yeah. It's simple. We got to use our head here, everyone.
Yeah. I can't remember. I think chapter 6 is about how to manage this for life. And one of them, I think one big thing for a lot of people is portion control. Is really hard. I agree with that. So, she talks a little bit about that. There are different ways to do it. I always recommend to people, you can buy this disc that's the size of a plate, and it's all portioned out for you, and you just fill the little sections. I noticed the guy that we watch all the time, where we listen to updates on COVID, he recommends that also for his bariatric clients. Yeah. So
that's Dr. Vaughn?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, the plate he recommended is actually sold out, which I thought was interesting.
He's pretty small, though. Like, he probably has a little child's plate.
Well, actually, and that's another thing. Another thing about portion control, you can pick smaller plates and bowls. So I tend to do that. I tend to use the appetizer plate to eat my meal.
She goes to McDonald's and gets the little Happy Meal for kids. And then puts all her food in that. She doesn't eat the food. She just wants a cute little plate, and it says Hello Kitty on it.
So yeah, those are some things. And then chapter 7 is about managing stress, which I think a lot of us need. I think this pandemic kind of revealed that.
As if life isn't stressful enough. Yeah, sure. I mean, I can tell you from personal experience, from people I know, a lot of people have developed psychiatric disorders, or maybe
it's just kind of surfaced.
Or maybe had an underlying psychiatric disorder that has, like you said, come to surface because of the stress of a pandemic. And it's amazing on how many different levels people are suffering because of this pandemic. Not just because of the COVID-19 itself, but of everything that happens as a result of it. The economic impacts for people, especially if you're in the service industry, you're in the food industry, your job's been wiped out. Yeah. Okay, what else is there?
Another thing that's in this book that I really liked, she kind of talks a little bit about how to deal with your doctor and whoever your medical team is. I think a lot of times, we have it come in where our clients come in and they tell us all kinds of things about their doctor's appointments. And she basically says, if you're not happy with your doctor, you don't feel like they're up to date on information, you really should go find another doctor. You're not stuck with any doctor.
Oh, yes. Given. Think about how much money you're paying for your health insurance. Or maybe you have an employer-based health insurance program. Just the same, your employer's taking that out of your salary to provide health insurance for you. Take advantage of it. Don't act like it's just no big thing. It is a big thing. Use it. Yeah. It's there for you. And believe me, somebody's paying for it.
You're talking to somebody who used to work in corporate America.
Yeah, you know all about it. Yeah.
I totally missed my health insurance, but I took advantage of it when I had it.
Yeah, you have to. All of us did it one time. When I taught at Foothill, they paid for all my Kaiser stuff. Now I've been paying out of pocket for, over a decade now. It's crazy. Yeah. Pushing for single payer health care. I would love that. Oh my God. For somebody like me, that small business, that would save us. It would save me an insane amount of money.
Yeah.
I have to pay like $1,100 just for me.
Yep.
You would think I'm this walking health risk based on how much I have to pay per month. But they don't see, that's the thing that's frustrating me about health insurance companies. And they're a racket. And I love podcasting because I can say this. It's a racket because they don't care about what your actual condition is, how fit you are. They just look at your age.
Yep.
And whatever preconditions you have. And that is what you're going to pay. And that's just total horse shiza. It is. If you're going to go the Darwinian route like they did, especially before the ACA, then evaluate everyone. People that are very healthy, give them a discount. Yep. People that are high risk and overweight and aren't taking care of themselves, charge them more.
Yep.
But it's never going to work like that. You know that. Okay, that was my rant. I'm off my soapbox. Okay,
so
what else?
Basically, the goal is to take care of yourself so that you don't have to spend so much time at the doctor. And always, why is the doctor not diagnosing or misdiagnosing, what have you? It's just a lot easier if you take care of yourself and you just get that clean bill of health.
And everything works better. Everything works better. Your mood feels better. You're
not stressed.
Yeah, you're not stressed. You're not as tired going up and down stairs. Sexual function's better. Yep. Bowel movements are better. Everything's better when you're in shape.
That one's really important. We don't talk about that much.
Well, it's not something people prefer to talk about in a podcast. Next week,
it's important.
We're talking about Dookie. Yes. Okay. What do you say? It's a part of that?
No, You lost me.
Okay, all right. We're going back to diabetes here.
Basically, do everything you can to prevent it.
Yes.
By the way you eat, you have to exercise. You can't just
Yeah.
change your diet and not do the exercise portion. You
You're-
still have to sleep well. You still have to manage stress, which is not easy, and I totally understand that, but you have to find coping mechanisms, because that stress part is huge.
And no doubt about it. All right, we getting close to that wrap-up point? I would say so. If you have any questions, please leave a comment in the comment section. And again, I encourage you to like and subscribe to our channel. If you're not sure how to do that, it's pretty simple. You just register your own YouTube channel.
You sign up.
Yeah, you sign up. It's easy. You just sign up with an email. They even give you a Gmail account with it through YouTube. So it's worth doing, and I'm telling you, it's good for our channel as well, because if you all are liking it, it puts us in the algorithm, and then, you know, it opens up the podcast to a broader audience as well. That's my understanding of it. All right, anything else you want to add, saying thank you for all the valuable information on diabetes, pre-diabetes, insulin insensitivity? I didn't say that right. Insulin resistance, thank you, sorry.
Insulin resistance.
Sometimes my brain, you know, it just gets twisted.
Yeah. It's one of those things we deal with a lot with our clients.
Yeah, that's a common one that comes up a lot.
Yeah, especially in our group classes. It's not just our one-on-one clients.
And I just realized part of my 23andMe genetics profile says I'm high risk for type 2 diabetes.
Oh.
And you know what? My glucose has never been anywhere near 100, right? And they say in the tutorial with 23andMe, when you get your results, your lifestyle choices are a bigger impact than your genetics, and I'm living proof of it.
I just know I watched my mom become a diabetic, and when I take these tests, because they're home-based tests, I have to prick myself. It is not fun.
It's not fun. It controls your life in a lot of ways, and believe me, you don't want to get to a point where they're hacking your foot off or your lower leg, because that's what'll happen.
Yeah. If it's not managed and maintained, it definitely can happen.
Or you just die of a heart attack or something, or it's bad news, stroke. All that stuff becomes much higher risk.
Right.
All right, so on that note, take care of yourself. Eat right. If you
Start the year off right.
Start the year off right, okay? And leave a comment if you need to, and share the video with your friends. Encourage health and wellness, all right? We need some of that right now. Okay, have a great weekend. We'll see you soon. Take care.